We do the big dramatic thing really well, right? We blow things up better than anybody. But this one has a spirit and a humor that we haven't quite seen.
We had never really done this much comedy or martial arts before. But at the same time, we really wanted to try and make all of the actions very character-driven.
This cinematic is different in that we put a little bit more emphasis on storytelling, like a little short film.
We really tried to pull the characters into a much more immersed environment and tell a story through action.
We were trying to figure out a way that we could tell this story a little more intimately than things we've done in the past. I mean, for example, Cataclysm was just, epic, destruction, hugeness, right? This, we wanted to do something that was more character-driven.
Wrath of Lich King and Cataclysm, they were all very epic and serious. And this one, get some of that Warcraft humor and, lightness.
We really ended up going back to the WoW base DNA of Warcraft 1, orcs versus humans. That seemed just a natural thing to do.
And it had a bit of a naval theme, and that's something that we just haven't done. Or at least not since, Tides?
In so many ways, it harkens back to the first teaser we did for Warcraft 3. And it was just this sense of this third-party agency inserting itself into our conflict. This is about red and blue, damn it, who are you? And in so many ways, the intro for Pandaria kind of echoes that, right? Red and blue just going at it, just hate. These guys are not gonna have lunch later on. And then to have, Shen jump into the mix, right? Just pop, 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 kind of school them both. What an amazing full circle. The Mists of Pandaria opening is just a mile marker of how far we've come.
Yeah, this one's a little different. We are definitely reaching a little farther out of our normal purview for these kind of cinematics to sort of reach for a stylized look and feel.
This time around, we really try to put a lot of focus on the pre-production phase, trying to come up with as many design calls and exploration in the very beginning of the project.
So what we did was we had what we call a blue sky design period of 2 weeks where we had the artists just kind of go crazy.
The idea behind it was that any artist on the team, whoever wanted to work on the stuff, they would get the basic guidelines of what the cinematic was going to be, and then they were just allowed to do whatever they want, total freeform.
Everything was okay, throwing everything in the kitchen sink, and maybe some things were really pushed, and then we might have to pull back or whatever to find the exact design that was right.
We ended up with more concepts on this show out of the character, out of the set and the environment and the effects than I think any other Blizzard show that we've had.
When I was told that I would be involved in pre-production, and I came home, it was Friday night when I told my wife about this great opportunity. She's like, "Oh, we should start working right now." So she took her 5D camera, and we kind of built a costume at home from whatever we had. We took some of the stuff from the Christmas tree, from whatever we had to build some of the accessories. I'm like, it's all good. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm gonna use this as a base to make a pin over on top of it. Certain elements served as inspiration for the final characters.
I remember when we were doing our blue sky period, there was one piece that came out that really sang to me, and it was a piece that was done by one of our concept artists, Matthias Verhasselt. He just did this really epic, fully fleshed out piece. You could look at a leaf and it felt like it had style and attitude, or a cloud, it's got style and attitude. And that one, to me, it just, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, this is the direction we got to go. And this could be a blueprint for feeding into the design language of everything else.
Then after 2 weeks, we basically had a gallery showing, where we put all the art up on cards and we put it all around in one of our conference rooms and just invited everyone to come in, check it out. We really should have had wine and cheese. We'll do that next time. But we also had the game team come in, and with them, we started to sift through all of these ideas.
They had a lot of visual cues to what could work and what would not work at all, which is something that you always want to have a good idea for what direction you want to take.
We were looking for something that Blizzard could call a new Blizzard style, because we love to do hyper detail. What if we did that on very stylized geometry?
If we start doing realistic stuff, there's no point even, why don't we get a real human, right?
We didn't want to go as styled as the game, but we wanted to find like a nice mix between the kind of realism, hyper-real type thing and the stylistic approach that the game has.
So the geometry said, I am not a real human being. But the detail said, I am organic, I am alive.
So that brought in new challenges as we wanted to push the detail of the characters, but at the same time keep them more dynamic and cartoony.
So then we had to go have the conversation with the game team where we said, everything else has to be like this, right? The other characters have to conform to this sort of style. The environment has to be stylized. Even our animation style, we're gonna have to explore something that fits, that's maybe a little more classic animation based than some of the sort of, hyper-real, always trying for reality things that we've done with some of our other shows. And the game team was like, yes, that we agree, let's do that. Of paramount importance on this show, given that it's a character piece, was that we were gonna have great characters that could carry their own on screen.
In the past, we had done a lot of things where we make a choice for the sake of making something look cool. We wanted to get away from that. We wanted to have a dedicated reason for everything that we do. One of the aspects of that that's very important is to set up a series of documentation that's going to be a guideline for everyone else on the production.
We would actually try and make up a life story or make up a bio for that certain character to explain why he looks the way he looks now.
We do a full description of the character. Say, for example, the human. He's a ship's captain. He's very agile. He's kind of like a born survivor.
Someone that would try to throw dirt in your eye if that would help him win the fight.
And the guy is obviously been living on the ship for most of his life.
Suntan, sort of older type of guy, a little bit past his prime.
The human character really drove the design of the show, actually. WoW itself is a very stylized game. And so we thought, let's do that. Let's design a guy that belongs in the world of Warcraft. We just knew this was a character that we could do a ton of great stuff with.
The orc is pretty funny because he's very reactive. It's reaction before thought.
This shipwreck was very personal to him, and he's upset from the beginning. A lot of his comrades had died on that ship, and he's very angry about it, and it doesn't subside really the entire time.
He's big and a little slow looking, but if he manages to land one blow, you'll probably be in some serious trouble.
And so the human tries to use that against him, and definitely the panda uses that against him.
The orc was definitely a challenging character to work on because he doesn't have clothes on, and you see his anatomy.
We had to come up with new systems to how to create muscle deformation, flexing, things that we didn't have to tackle as closely before.
And so now he looks pretty big, he communicates his presence, and he's ready to tear stuff up.
It's kind of funny, actually, because initially it wasn't going to be Chen. We were going to do 3 original characters.
We did many different versions, some younger, some the version we like was a little wiser and older.
Kind of an emperor sort of look.
He was supposed to be kind of more grizzled, kind of a veteran type character.
The old kung fu master Pandaria that was kind of in, a little bit more tattered robes with the kind of crazier eyebrows.
But then when we go to the meeting and we are going to present the whole thing, the whole artwork, we play the animatic again.
It was, great reaction, and Samwise Didier was with us, and he saw it for the first time and said, "Oh, was that Chen? That was so cool." And we said, "Well, no, actually, we were doing 3 original characters." And he was like, "Oh, I thought it was Chen. Oh, why couldn't it be Chen?" And so we started talking about it, and ultimately it was like, well, hell yeah, why couldn't it be Chen?
Ah, greetings, my friend.
Because he was in Warcraft 3, he's He's the only Pandarian that I'm aware of that's traveled outside of Pandaria, that's gone to Azeroth, to other lands. So, he's an adventurer. He's a really sort of friendly guy in a way. My feeling is that after the cinematic ends, they got really drunk, all three of them,
Have one on the house.
We ended up taking a more stylized and exaggerated approach to the look of the film and to the look of the animation. It's kind of the same approach that like Disney has taken all the way back to the 1930s. They decided that they wanted to make something clear and entertaining.
Where you've got a lot of squash and stretch and very exaggerated movements, that kind of thing, starts and stops,
With the snappier timing, they were able to hold these poses longer, which would give the audience time to read their expressions.
So we kind of had to interrupt the fight for just a moment, look at their face, and then go back to the fight. We take all the emotional beats of the story and draw really detailed, really expressive facial expressions for all of those moments. We call that a model sheet, and that gives us an idea if the character will work in all those different places.
We wanted their faces to have great readability and to work really well with the animation. That's something that we consciously made choices of this time, like these have to work well in animation.
Putting a layer of controls on the face so that the animators could hit those expressions was a must.
We created a new facial system for this show that actually mimics the muscles in the face, where in the past it was a much more sculptural approach.
And with Chen, the extra challenge was we were going to pile a bunch of fur on top of his face, right? So we found that we would have to push the animation farther than we normally would have. That you'd do it and you'd say, oh, that looks pretty broad. Then you'd put the fur on it and you go, where'd my animation go? We're not looking to go into the uncanny valley. We're not looking to be real, but we're looking to be truthful, right? And that's why the video reference was so important to us, was because it gave us that chance to mine for little truths, little naturalisms.
We had to take the storyboards and sort of plus it and come up with new moves that worked in actual 3D space and in live action. If it could work in live action, it would definitely work in 3D, so that was a great test.
We knew we wanted to make this a cool fight. We wanted it to be fun. And we initially thought that we weren't going to be able to take care of all that business ourselves, that we might need a fight choreographer to come in and help us through some of the hard stuff. But it just dragged on long enough, the search for that person, that we got to the point where we'd shot a lot of stuff and we were having a lot of fun. At some point we just kind of said, yeah, we'll just do it. We'll just finish it ourselves,
We took that in and sort of distilled the performance down to its main ingredients. We figured out what were the most main important actions, what's really important gags, really important moves, and then we took everything else out.
Jeremiah Johnson is one of our modelers. He's also very good at being an orc, it turns out. He really brought a lot of the wounded pathos to the character that I was excited about.
We had him act out the shot where the orc runs into the statue. We set up a pad and we put it up against the wall, and we asked him to run into the pad as hard as he could.
He really gave it his all.
Action.
Holy He so gave it his all. He broke one of the walls in our Innocense room.
The hole in the wall was not my fault. I was just doing what I was told to do.
From an environment design standpoint of view, the cinematic more than others, we really try to go stylized a lot into what the game development team's been doing.
We had one big vista shot towards the end that was actually really fun to work on, and we started with the game geo, and we called out different landmarks that we liked in the geo, and then we started building on top of that. But what's really cool about it is you can really look at that shot, and if you're familiar with the area in the game, you can really call out like, hey, I've been there. Oh, that building exists as well. It's just in a higher fidelity form.
Previous ones, especially Cataclysm, had a lot more variations in the settings. This is quite a bit more intimate, and I think more attention has to be paid to the details in that case because you're going to see so much more of it.
We actually went out with a full camera set, and we took HDRI images of the environment supervisor, Seth, on the scene with us, dressed like the captain with the navy coat and the white shirt. And he actually dunked himself into the ocean, which is really crazy because it's super cold that morning. And we're able to shoot a lot of great footages that we can use for texturing references and also lighting references. We don't simply just take a photo and apply to the character and the environment. We actually go over with a paintbrush and do these custom paintings to make these almost more illustrative.
So everything feels really like a magical place and dreamlike in the fog and everything.
It started off very foggy, very monotone foggy things. And the challenge is to how to bring the color into that foggy environment. And at the same time become sunny like spring and everything become beautiful.
Basically, the fog, the atmosphere is almost a character. We have like a couple of different versions of the fog. There's the fog that's just sort of a ground fog through the whole cinematic, that's sort of low-lying, almost dry ice character. And then when Chen appears, he sort of has a magical connection with the fog, I guess, and he sort of swirls it around himself into this sort of whirlwind.
We were even talking about potentially taking the effects more towards the game. The game's effects are very stylized.
We had the fog literally going in spirals and things like that. That turned out to be way too stylized. What we ended up with was about 20% stylistic and about 80% letting just the natural fluid dynamics laws take control.
Those little bugs you see flying around, if you zoom in, that's StarCraft 2 Zerg flying around. I happen to be working on StarCraft 2 at the same time, so I just took the same model from Mutalisks, Overseers, and Overlords, and Corruptors, and put them in the World of Warcraft.
Every show, we basically try to one-up ourselves. And with that comes unique situations and challenges that we have.
We had a new way of doing cloth on this show, and it was really exciting. It was a big step forward for us because in the past we would actually model cloth.
We moved into something called pattern-based system where we develop all the clothing just like you would develop a real piece of cloth.
They'll look more real because they'll have real seams where they're supposed to.
And we even went to the garment district and bought a whole bunch of materials and compared how materials drape.
And we got a hat, and we got a lion mask that we cut up and painted to look like a panda mask.
And we shot him in different poses, and we shot how the cloth will react, how the hat will react.
So that we could see how the fabric would move when you jumped around in it.
The hair for Chen was probably the most, it was the most challenging hair groom we've done to date.
We had not done that level of fur before. I think it's been tremendously successful at some great cost to poor Jeremiah, who's been placing all that hair.
The amount of hair in Olive Kane's hair groom and in Leah's hair groom all fit into this amount of space on the panda.
He had to go in and individually lay in all these follicles. I don't even know how many follicles it was, an insane number.
Like Leia, for instance, she had on the order of like 2,200 follicles. For Chen, just his head had about 33,000. This actually came up before with Cataclysm when we thought we were going to do a Worgen, and we ended up canceling the Worgen in favor of just mass destruction.
So we had like multiple hair systems that all had to be integrated on that same face. So it was a huge undertaking.
And that has been an experience. Our first initial shots of pushing the hair through the system brought down a good portion of the Blizzard campus as far as its network capability.
In general, I mean, this has been a really interesting experience for us just because of being able to do something a little bit different.
We all had to step outside our boxes of what we normally do and learn a lot of new techniques. And because of this, I think that we can even bring some of these techniques back into that hyper-realistic animation that we do on the other projects.
I like that the characters didn't take themselves too seriously, and I like that we were able to kind of build characters that showed that.
We love these characters so much. We've fallen in love with them. We hope we can do something else with them sometime because, they're just so cool.
And I think that piece just absolutely encapsulates everything that we want to say, about this chapter.
For my kind, the true question is, what is worth fighting for?